Welcome once again to the Brattlecast. This is Jordan Rich. I have the pleasure of sitting down on a regular basis with the owner of the Brattle Bookshop in Boston, Mr. Ken Gloss, who is a very busy guy but loves his work, doesn't consider it work when you think about all the fun he has and all the interesting things that he comes across. You're so accommodating in so many ways. And I'll just make this personal. I mean, I asked you to, if you were interested, give a talk to a group that I was involved in. And you didn't hesitate. You loved it. You jumped at the chance. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how the talks unfold, why they're so special, and what you can do for people. And I guess you even want to throw it out there that you're available.
Well, yeah, I love doing talks at local libraries, historical societies, museums, clubs. If a friend asks and has in a building, I've done a number of sort of the senior living centers. And it gives me a chance because to meet people who don't normally come into the store. And very definitely, I'll mention this at the beginning of this podcast and the end, if you have a group and you want me to come out, give a call, email. I'm more than happy. I'm available. I do talks. Usually the talks last about an hour. I do about half an hour, 40 minutes. Basically, I give a little of my background, the history of the store, my father, the buildings, the moves. And one of the interesting parts about that is even the characters who have come in, the wonderful and rare items that I've had or coming in or items that I show. And one of the things that I've definitely found is if you're doing a talk like this, I don't try to teach anybody anything about used and rare books. I don't try to impart the knowledge. What I do try to do is tell stories and entertain. Because if you try to teach people about what's going on, I bet you I could put an audience asleep in 5 minutes. Whereas if you tell stories and talk about characters and talk about people, one of the stories I tell is about the characters who were my employees. This will give you an idea of how tangential I can get. Mm-hmm. I had an employee once. Years ago, I had just started working full-time for my father. So this was back almost 50 plus years ago. He had been working at the store a few days, and we had 4 tickets to a Celtics game. Now, my wife for 10 years worked for the Celtics, so we got tickets every once in a while. And I said, Hugh, do you want to go to the Celtics game? And he said, yes, but give me the tickets and I'll meet you there. Now, this is one of the most memorable introductions I have ever had. My wife and I get to the game. My employee who just started working for me is sitting there with a woman, and he goes, I'd like you to meet my wife, Mickey. We're getting divorced tomorrow.
Oh,
what do you say to an introduction like that?
Oh, my goodness, that's a full court.
And this is 50 years later, and it's still in. And they were both, yeah. Everybody was friendly and wonderful. And what I collect, one of the things that I collect is not books, it's not rare items, it's not autographs, it's not collectibles. I collect stories. And I have hundreds and hundreds of stories on my iPhone and in a list where literally it's either one word, one phrase, one sentence that just reminds me of a story. And I could put a few of those pages up on a wall and throw dots at them, and I could do an hour lecture just from that. Now, I also talk about the Antiques Roadshow and it's what it's like behind the scenes and how I go out and some of the more interesting appraisals that have either made the show or not made the show and why they didn't make it on a few occasions, about how wonderful it is to travel around this country and how beautiful the country is, how wonderful the people are. Do not talk about politics and religion. That's an absolute. And then I go on and tell about some of the rarest books. But what I love about it for me is the question and answer. because obviously I know what I'm going to say in most cases, although sometimes I even surprise myself on that. But when I get questions and answers, I can talk about what people want me to talk about, some of the unusual questions they ask. And not all of the questions are about uh, how rare is this book, how valuable is the book, how much money can I make on the book. But it might be, look at what was written inside the front cover, and it was Valentine's Day 1870, and what do you know about those type of inscriptions? Are those valuable? Or another interesting thing that's come up at doing these talks is, if you go and do a talk, and part of the at the end of the talk I do appraisal, or give people ideas and valuations. And some people come with one book, two books. Some people come with boxes and boxes of books. I tell the people organizing a lecture, do not set up any rules, do not set up any limits. And I say, because no matter what rules and limits you set up, people aren't going to listen to you anyways. So why make it difficult? But one of the things that you think about when you're doing this, and this is also when I do it at the store, when I do it at a roadshow, when I do it at an event, praising, if you tell somebody that the book's worth $10,000, $20,000, $100,000, most of those people are going to be very, very happy. But what do you do when the book comes in and it's really has little or no value? Of course, you learn ways to say to people very nicely, well, sentimentally, this might be a valuable book, but it's not terribly valuable. And you have nice ways of saying it. But what I found over the years, when I first started doing this, I was really hesitant, really unsure. What do you do about disappointing people? What I've learned is, when you're doing a lecture at a library, historical society, people have brought books in, and you look and you very nicely say to them, yes, this is your family book. It might be valuable, or this is the book that your grandmother gave you or handed down, or you picked up at a flea market, whatever, but it's not terribly valuable. And in probably 90% of the cases, people go, that's wonderful, that's great, thank you very much. Now I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Right.
I don't have to, I can give it to the grandchildren. I can give it to the local library. I can read it. I don't have to worry about it. And actually, it's almost like you're releasing them from being a caretaker or a custodian of this item. The joy that sometimes comes in from saying, no, it doesn't have any intrinsic or rare value. If you enjoy it, don't worry about it. If the kids have it, great. And then another thing that happens, people bring me in books that aren't in good condition. And they start out by saying, we realize this isn't in good condition. It probably has, it's 100, 200 years old. It's just hasn't been cared for well. And I said, many times I'll say to them, the fact that it's not in good condition really doesn't reduce the value in this case, because it's not valuable in good condition either. But
let them down easy, right?
Yeah, and sometimes though, and this is a line that I've learned from my father when I'm doing lectures, is there are times when you tell somebody, gee, this really isn't a value, and you can see their sort of face drop and so on. And then I go, but bring it to me in 100 years and I'll give you thousands of dollars for it. And first of all, they hear thousands of dollars. And then they realize what you just said, and it usually brings a smile to your face.
Well, one of the things that I noted when you did it with my group, and I known you for years, is you feed off the audience and you feed off of whatever the subject matter people want to bring up. Or if you're in a particular library in a particular town, you'll have a little story about that area. I mean, it's I'm not going to say on the spot, off the cuff, but so much of what you do is referencing things based on what you're experiencing. And that's why it makes it so much fun for the audience.
Well, that we love that. Now, I also will say that I do many times now remote since COVID. Sometimes I'll do a lecture or talk to a group in California. I did one overseas. Now with the new technology, you can do that. Now, it's a little harder to feed off the audience, but when I do those, I actually ask whoever's monitoring it to leave some of the people's faces on the screen, not necessarily for everybody to see, but so I can feel like I'm talking to somebody.
Mm.
Matter of fact, one of the things that I find is a huge plus for me even doing our podcast is that I'm talking to you. To do it and just have nothing on the screen and nobody there, it's harder. I do the talks, usually do them for an hour. I don't charge, although I will accept honorariums. My main thing is I want to get the name and the store and the people and the excitement out there. And people think, many of my colleagues think I do these type of talks. I do all of the PR and publicity, and I go home from every talk with a carload of rare books. It is almost never do I buy any books at a talk like this, once in a great while.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'll get a call a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. People don't remember, but they got a notice from their library. They don't even remember where they got the notice. And they call us, they have estates, you get called in. And so it benefits me in the long run.
Well, we should also add that you don't come empty-handed. You always bring surprise things to show the crowd, even a few little items here and there, and I think that's what impresses, a little show and tell really impresses people.
You always bring along some show and tell. It definitely gets the talk going. I have to admit, one of the requirements for me to bring show and tell is has to be light. It can't be a heavy, big book. Because I tend to bring things. Sometimes I bring a page from a book that I'll pass around that's 500 years old, and I'll let people hold it, touch it, feel it. And a lot of people are amazed that you bring a 500-year-old page. Well, paper back 500 years ago was very well made. So it's not that fragile. It's not going to fall apart in your hands. Of course, the disadvantage to that paper was at the time it was very expensive. So 500 years ago, you had to be wealthy to get an education to learn how to read. You had to be almost nobility to buy a book. Now they're not quite as well made, but they can be distributed in the millions. And the real value of books is the knowledge in the books. But I love doing the talks. I love getting out either by Zoom or remotely, or going out to a local institution. And if any of you are listening, want me to do it, you have groups. I love meeting the people, and I particularly love meeting the people who find it difficult getting into the city, getting into Boston, don't like the idea of parking, or just can't make it. I actually also find that the age group of the people who come to my talks nowadays, I tend to be the youngest person there in many cases. Although I did a talk recently in one of the towns just outside of Boston, and a woman showed up and she said, "Hi, Ken. When I was in college, I majored in chemistry. I did a research paper with someone else as an undergraduate that got published in a scientific journal. She was the partner that I did it with." So it was like I got to, I get friends coming sometimes who I haven't seen in years and years. I love doing lectures. If anyone out there, and I can tell you, the main thing is tell stories, entertain. People come in because they want to find out what their books are worth. And it's usually a very, very nice and enjoyable evening or afternoon.
Yes, exactly. You're Mr. Flexible. And by the way, brattlebookshop.com is the way you can reach Ken and inquire about that or anything else about the store or the podcast, whatever. I can just say you are an outstanding speaker, and I'm not just saying that because we do this together.
Well, I enjoy the interesting part here. I'll tell you one sort of behind the scenes things about when I set up the lectures. I do get to work at 5:30 in the morning. People call me to set up a lecture. I usually try to limit to about 2 a month because more than that gets to be too many. And I really feel a rush when someone calls me, we get it set up, I'm ready to go. The hardest point of doing a lecture is when it's about 3 or 4 in the afternoon of the day of the lecture, and I realize I'm not going home right after work, and I'm like, oh, this is a lot more work. The minute, though, I'm at that lecture and start talking, it's such fun, such a joy. The other thing I do is, if the lecture is not right in the absolute Boston area, is let's say the lecture is about an hour away or an hour and a half, I always leave 2.5 times earlier than I need. If it should be an hour, I'd leave almost 3 hours early. I take into traffic into account.
That's the sign of a pro speaker. Ken, thank you as always, and
thank you.
Have fun on the lecture circuit.
And if anyone out there is listening and wants me to do it, like I say, either in person or remotely, let me know.